So it became one of those.
I wonder who she went to.
She was down in Massachusetts, in Boston. She went to
Okay.
Massachusetts.
You're hot mic and you're gonna get.
Okay.
How are you?
Good. I just
Hey,
made
Sean.
myself sound nice and ignorant on mic.
How's life?
Get used to it.
Scheduled school board meeting. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. First up, open the floor if there's any public comment, since there are some members of the public here. All right, and we'll go ahead and close the floor at 5:16. Next, we have board comments and committee updates. Are there any updates, comments?
Well, I met today for the first meeting of the Health Benefits Committee. So it was more like a organizational meeting, and I'll have more as the time goes on. We expect to be in the committee till about June, and then recommendations will be made. So I'll bring you further information as it goes.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
The budget committee met. Todd presented our warrant and warrant articles and everything, and I'm pleased to say the budget committee voted to recommend all of our warrant articles, including the operating budget, by unanimous vote. So it went very well, was very well received. I got quite a few compliments on what a nice job we did in presenting and laying everything out clearly and justifying what we want to spend.
Awesome. Great. Anyone else? All right. Head right into student rep report then, please, Sean.
All right. So the boys basketball team lost to Groveton on Friday. They are now 2-7. They will play Sunapee tomorrow in Sunapee. Also, the girls will play tomorrow in Sunapee. They also lost to Groveton, but they are 3-8. The boys JV basketball team beat Oyster River yesterday by a solid score of 19 points. I believe that's what I heard from the score. The track and field team are on to qualifying meets. Most of the girls qualified for states, and Aiden Barber qualified for the boys, along with the relay teams. And Alana Hagan qualified for nationals and will be racing in nationals for the 800. For swimming, Annika Benson and Dylan Burns both qualified for states. And now on to some clubs. Net Zero is starting a seed project in which they will grow flowers and vegetables. Interact Club is trying to start a food drive for the food pantry downtown. The class of 2026 is having a chili cook-off, which I said before, but that's going to be this Saturday from 5:30 to 7 for anybody who wants to attend. I'm not sure exactly how it works, but I believe you pay to enter, and then I don't know if you have to pay for each chili that you eat, but
Do you know where that is?
I believe that's going to be here probably in the half, but don't call me on that. I don't
Oh,
want,
we are.
I don't want to direct everybody to show up here.
How unfortunate then that you just said it on camera.
And then the National Honor Society, I got sent a bunch of what to say. So, as I said before, they're still doing the fellowship, Rochester Fellowship kitchen, and they're looking for volunteers for that. They are doing care bags, which is starting on next Monday, the 1st, January 22nd, and that will be running into February 12th, so it's going to be 3 weeks. There's going to be flyers around town and boxes here at the school. There is going to be a community drop-off event. We don't know the exact day of that event, though, so I will if it comes up in another meeting, I'll let everybody know the date for that. And the National Honor Society is also doing a snowman contest, which is going to start next week and run until April 22nd. There's also going to be flyers downtown, and there's going to be voting, and the winners will receive community gift cards. Not sure the exact locations. We've thrown around some ideas. It's going to be Oak House, Panzanella's are some of the options. That's all I have.
Is there a minimum height? Because I know there's not a ton of snow out there. It's really good for snowmen,
I mean,
so
I
I'm
hope
wondering.
it snows more. We probably would end up having to cancel it.
Can I
Maybe
assume
by
that-
April.
I
we'll have
assume
some
there's
more.
going to be a lot.
But it's running through April
Maybe we
28th.
should have-
Wouldn't it make, are they just doing it when there's snow and then they take a picture of what they've made?
I believe
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
going to be
yeah.
how it works.
That way you
That
don't
was
have
think
to-
if it melted.
That's what
halfway
they
through,
did
yeah,
last year.
that would be
so,
fair.
Yeah,
so
you
you don't
can
have to
take
hinge
it.
on a particular snow day.
Yeah, no.
That,
Not
that
gonna
could be troublesome.
bring everybody in.
Awesome. Thanks, Sean.
Thank you, Sean.
All right, moving over to superintendent report.
Yeah, I actually, before I get into my regular report, I wanted to invite our NES library media specialist, Jen Gukasian, to come up. She has a special announcement for us.
Thanks for the announcement or for the introduction.
Sure.
So that's right, I'm Jennifer Gulkezian, the elementary librarian. This is Jennifer Beckles from the English as a Second Language team. And well, we're here as part of the Multicultural Potluck Committee to announce that we're having an all families event coming up February 21st, that's a Wednesday, 5 to 6:30 at the NES cafeteria. We will be inviting families and supporting them in sharing a dish from a region or a country. We're going to help them with a handsome little sign to promote whatever they decide to share. This is a team made up of educators from both the middle high and the elementary school, I'm really happy to say. And the English as a Second Language team has been a really huge contributor to the team. The National Honor Society is going to be volunteering for us. And we just want to share the word. We hope that you're as excited as we are and spread the word and come.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. It's a great event. Okay, moving on to my usual report. I did want to just follow up, mentioned in correspondence last meeting that had some community members reach out to discuss things related to athletic programs. And Janie Hayes and I met with a couple of community members to discuss the concerns that they had. Just to kind of summarize, a lot of what we talked about centered around the Epping Newmarket cooperative football arrangement and things we could do to make that arrangement work better. However, there were some conversations about just improving communication from the school district regarding athletic events to make sure more kids were, more information was out there for the public to have. As a follow-up to that, one of the things that Jamie and I had already started working on was the cooperative football agreement with Epping was initially agreed to in 2010, and it hasn't been reviewed since then. And certainly the needs and dynamics of the relationship have changed in the 14 years. So we are scheduled, in fact, Valentine's Day, believe it or not, we have a meeting scheduled with the Epping leadership to review the football cooperative agreement and make sure it still works for us and figure out ways we can improve the coordination. I mean, clearly for the kids who play football, it's a great opportunity and we want to make sure to make that possible, but we can also do things to make it work more effectively. So there's that. I would also mention that in the course, and actually this is the second time I've had a group of football parents come to me in the last 2 years, and both times we ended up in a conversation about athletic facilities. You know, one of the dreams that comes from a lot of the football community is, wouldn't it be great if we had a field in Newmarket where we could host an occasional home football game, so that it would be more ability for Newmarket people to see it. And we did spend some time talking about some of the shortcomings of the Epping facility in terms of a spectator experience. So anyway, so I agreed to bring those issues up with Epping and so forth, and we're going to work to see what we can do. But it was a very positive meeting, a group of very parents willing to get involved in finding solutions, not just saying, hey, I want to dump some things on you. It was a very good conversation, so I look forward to working with these people to see what we can figure out. Moving from there, just a quick reminder, January 23rd is the primary election day, and as people know, that has become a teacher workshop day. So for students, you don't have to come to school next Tuesday, so enjoy that. For the staff, we are having a teacher workshop day on that day, and it's all of us are gathering here at the elementary school, and it's going to be a vision of our graduate launch day. So we're really excited about that. Kind of a couple of quick things I just did want to mention. Jason Carey, our IT director, has been doing an enormous amount of work around cybersecurity in the last, really the last year. And so we've done a lot of things. launching a multi-factor authentication process. We're doing, we're increasing password complexity as we approved a policy on the bring your own device network. We're looking at a lot of things to improve cybersecurity. And one of the things I did want to mention about that is Jason was on a call with the people from Primax who sort of do the reviews for the state, and they were saying Newmarket is way ahead of the curve in terms of getting on top of these things, and asked Jason if he would be willing to participate in some programming that they do to just talk about what are the kinds of things that we have been able to do that have been what you would call kind of low-hanging fruit stuff that you could do to just make your network more secure. So I just want to give Jason a shout out and say what a great job he has done on that regard. And then the last thing, just in terms of shout outs, I did want to take a moment to just say a couple of quick words. We've had some weird weather in the last couple of weeks. We had a snowstorm that like blitzed us with a heavy amount of snow on a weekend, and then we got followed up with a massive rainstorm and 50-degree weather that melted it all in the span of like no time. What is often lost in that is the struggle that our facilities department has to manage that kind of stuff. So we were able to have school on the Monday after that snowstorm, partly because our facilities department was here Sunday getting the schools ready and doing what they needed to do it. Immediately following that, though, when the heavy rains came, we had to deal with the fact that we had a foot of snow on our roofs, and if heavy rain came, that would lead to leaks. And so immediately they were up on the roof shoveling all the snow off to protect us, and I'm glad to report we had very minimal leakage during that heavy rainstorm. And so this is a long-winded way of my saying thank you to Dave Riley and his team for all the hard work they do on that, because I think it's sometimes gets lost in the shuffle.
Absolutely.
So am I right to interpret that? I know that basketball had to be moved this weekend because in the elementary school gym because of an issue with the leak. Is that been fixed?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Everything. Yeah. We've had some minor things. I'd love to tell you it was. We had no leakage, but the level of problems were far less than they could have been, given the older roofs that we have in multiple of our buildings. Yep.
Is that it?
That's it.
Okay, awesome. We will head right up into presentation. Kyle and Julian, are you here? So there you are. Ready to start whenever you are.
Hi, so my name is Kyle Kickers. I am audit manager at Project and Sanderson. So I oversee the Newmarket School District audit. I've run for a number of years before. This year got passed off to Julian, so he was the auditor in charge. So let's see if I can share my screen here and we'll just go through the audit report. I'm just going to do it at a summary level overview here. Okay, so I'm going to see the audit report.
Not yet.
No.
Hey, Tim. Volume a little. Turn the volume up a little.
So that should be sharing now.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so in the interest of time, we're just going to keep this real brief and kind of do a summary level. If you have specific questions, let me know and we can go into more detail. So starting off is the auditor's report. So this is kind of the crux of the audit and summarizes the results. And right up at the top, we have the opinions. First paragraph says what the different opinion units are. And then the second paragraph says what the opinions are. So in our opinion, the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects for the governmental activities, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining fund for Newmarket School District. So that's what you want to hear. That is what you would consider a clean opinion across all opinion units.
Kyle, if you could just share the page numbers you go through, that'd be really helpful.
It's page 11.
Sure. Yep, so page 1 here of the report. And then the rest of the report kind of outlines the basis for our opinions. There was one change in accounting principle that related to IT arrangements. We reviewed those and determined that that wasn't applicable to have any change in reporting for this year. It outlines the responsibilities of management, the responsibilities of the auditor, discusses other information that's included in the financial statements. And in addition, there is other reporting that relates to a single audit. So in addition to the financial statement audit, you had a single audit, which anytime a governmental entity spends more than $750,000 of federal money, there's a separate compliance audit of that federal money. So that report is also included in the financial report. The next section is management's discussion and analysis. So this is prepared by your finance department. If you're reading through the financials, this would be a good place to go to identify important information. It's got financial highlights. It's a bit more introspective than you would find in financials, which are the financials are more based on accounting standards. This highlights information that's more relevant perhaps to management. It also provides more prior to current year information, whereas the financial statements themselves typically just show the current year financial information. So that the management's discussion and analysis starts on page 4 and goes through page 10 of the audit report. We'll just touch on the basic financial statements and how each of them are slightly different. So the first, Exhibit A, this is page 11. These are the governmental activities. So this shows all of the operations of the school district in total in one single column. It also provides all of the current and long-term assets and liabilities. So it includes things like capital assets and long-term debt, pension liabilities, both have information. These financials would be comparable if you're familiar with commercial or nonprofit type entities. This would be comparable to those type entities if you were to compare a government to a nonprofit or commercial. Exhibit B are the revenues and expenses of the governmental activities. And then here, Exhibit C, this is page 13. We go to the fund financial statements. So this breaks down the financial information into individual funds. So we have the general fund, which is your main operating fund. This also includes the expendable trust fund information as well as student activity information that pertains to the general operations of the school. Then we have a column for federal projects, so these would be your grants funds. And then a column for other governmental funds, so other funds such as the remaining student activity funds, your food service fund. They don't meet the criteria for being reported as an individual major fund, so they get combined here. And then there's a total column for your governmental funds. Main difference between the governmental funds and your governmental activities is that this doesn't include long-term assets and liabilities. So there's no capital assets, there's no long-term liability for debt, pension, OPEB, or anything like that. Exhibit C2 compares the fund financials to the governmental activities. So this lists out what all of those long-term assets and liabilities are. So it lists out your assets, your pension information, OPEB, and long-term debt. Exhibit C3, which is on page 15. These are your revenues and expenditures of the governmental funds. And then Exhibit C4 compares the revenues and expenditures of the funds to the governmental activities as a whole. So these are revenues and expenditures that pertain to your long-term activity, such as what you capitalize for assets, depreciation expense, that you recognize in the governmental activities but not in the governmental funds. Exhibit D1, this is page 17. This is a budget to actual for the general fund. So this would be comparable to information that you probably see throughout the year, showing budget to actual information for revenues and expenditures. And there are even more detailed summaries of revenues and expenditures at the end of the report that I'll just touch on as we go through. Then Exhibit D2, this is budget to actual for your grants fund. And then we get into the detailed notes. So Note 1 just summarizes the accounting policies. Note 2 talks more about budgetary information, and then the remaining notes are all the details, more detailed information of the notes themselves. So we'll skip through these. Okay, so going to page 38, there are additional required supplementary information for pension and OPEB information. So the school district reports its share of the New Hampshire retirement system's pension and OPEB liabilities, and these are required schedules that pertain to those. So we have Exhibit E and F pertain to pension. There's a notes page for that. G and H pertain to OPEB. Exhibit I relates to the school district's own local OPEB liability, and then there's a page of notes for that. And then we have more detailed information at the end here. So Schedule 1, this may be something that management is interested in. This is a more detailed budget to actual for your revenues for the year. Schedule 2 is more detailed budget to actual for expenditures. And Schedule 3 is changes in unassigned fund balance. So the ending number here, the unassigned fund balance, this would affect what you have available to return to the taxpayers at the end of the year when the subsequent year's tax rate is set. Just scanning through, these are the non-major funds that don't meet the criteria for reporting as major. This is just a summary of the student utility funds on page 50 and 51. And there are additional reports starting on page 52 that pertain to the single audit. So this is compliance with the federal grants that the school district received and spent during the year. So Schedule 1, this is page 56. No material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies. So you received an unmodified opinion on your federal awards. And then it lists out what those awards are. So that pretty much summarizes the financial statements themselves. In terms of audit recommendations or findings, we didn't have any significant ones. There was one related to student activity funds that belong to graduating classes. So individual classes will fundraise money for trips and such. When those classes graduate, that money still belongs to those students. So we recommend prior to graduation just determining how that money is to be either returned or distributed. There was one untimely deposit identified that's very, very minimal. And then the last recommendation we had was on policies. So just as a best practice, we recommend reviewing financial policies and other significant policies every 3 to 5 years as a best practice, with changes in different accounting standards, practices of the school district, board members. This would be a good practice to go through just to make sure your policies are still relevant, they're meeting their objectives, and that they reflect any changes in the accounting standards themselves. So those were the only comments that we had as far as improvements or recommendations. Overall, the audit went very smoothly. I know we say this each year, but it's a very clean audit. We usually do it at the end of July, and in terms of scheduling to get the audit ready, at that point it takes a very organized finance office. So I'd just like to commend the finance office for, again, putting everything together for us in a timely manner. And I would say you have an excellent finance office of all the school districts we do about 100 school audits each year. This is one of the cleaner ones that we do each year. So I would like to just say thank you for that.
Great. Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions or
Any
statements?
questions?
Any
Jana wants to come up and brag? Or
I just wanted to ask if anyone has any questions. I know that even for people like myself that are involved in this, the balance sheet is always a little strange for us because we live in expenditures and revenues. So it always feels a little like monopoly money if you know, when you see these big numbers on the sheet. So if you have questions, feel free to ask. Kyle can explain them very, very adeptly. And I always want to take an opportunity to thank the auditing team. They come out, they're very professional. They come out and they always set aside 4 or 5 days. We generally get them out of there in about 2.5 to 3. And, you know, I say this every year, but as Kyle alluded to, it takes an awful lot of effort on the part of the team to pull that information together so cleanly and so quickly. And I can't speak highly enough of the team that I work with and how fortunate we are to have them in the business office, because it is kind of noteworthy to be able to, especially this year when we were going through a financial system conversion, to be able to, you know, produce that kind of information within a 3-week time period and have such a clean audit. It really is a testament to the people I work with. I give the credit to a high level of professionalism in that office. So, and thank you, Kyle. Appreciate your time, and thank you to Julian.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Any questions?
Can I ask a quick question about the individual class budgets? Is that a policy issue or procedural issue for us?
It's more of a procedural issue. We are their fiduciary funds. We're responsible for safeguarding them for people, but we probably should have a procedure that, you know, within the last month of the school year, if there are funds left in those accounts, we should be reaching out to class officers at that time rather than waiting until the students have all gone off to their new lives. So yeah, it's not. You know, we definitely want to, we're working on that. I know that they have tried to reach out to officers, but the problem is after they leave school, it's a little harder to come in contact with some of them and get clarity around what they want to do with those funds. I believe the oak trees this past year were a donation from the graduating class. They gave it to the students that were here and asked them to plant the oak trees on behalf, or Net Zero to plant.
Yeah, Net Zero did the planting, but the funds to pay for them were the gift of the class of 20.
Yeah, yeah.
Can each class leave the funds for the next class? I know we
They-
do that with Project Grad, like, we always leave at least 1,000 in the account, but or if there's more.
Yep.
So can they do that?
They
every year?
can. It's just that they have to determine before they leave as a class what they want to do with that money, because it's their money. It's not, we can't determine it for them.
Right, but I mean,
So-
that's something, one of their options.
Yeah,
Don't
yes, certainly. I mean, I think,
class,
and the
yeah.
other thing is, approaching them and asking them if they would be willing to donate to certain causes like Project Graduation or something like that. I'm sure, that would be a great endeavor to do, and maybe that's something we could,
Yeah, that's a good,
promote.
yeah.
Thank you, I just wanted to make sure you weren't waiting on the policy committee to do something, so
Well,
thank you.
I did want to mention, we do have a number of, financial policies being reviewed by Jenna, which we'll bring to policy in February.
Anything else for Kyle before we let him go off into the night?
No, thank you both very much.
All right, thanks, Kyle.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right, thank you, have a good night.
All right, Janet, we'll stay up there for Q2 financials.
Okay, quarter two financials. I can't believe we've actually got halfway through the year. It doesn't seem possible. So again, they're in the similar format to what you have with expenditures and revenues. As you notice on the first page, bottom of page 1, the total, the variance from the budgeted amount is a positive variance, meaning we have 818,000 plus left that we haven't got either encumbered or earmarked for salaries. That's about $600,000 lower than we had last year at this time. I'm not concerned about that because if you recall, at the end of last year, we had additional funds that we, as we came into the year because of grant funding and different things like that. So it is a little lower than we typically are, but not dramatically so. It's just that comparing it to last year, it's a little, that was a little bit of a variant. So as we go forward into that, and the details are listed with the variances throughout the report, but a couple of noteworthy things to note. The SAFE grant that we applied for, and I talked to you folks about, applied for another round of that. We did not get that award. I mention that because as we start talking about capital plans and how we are going to address those needs, those remaining windows at NES, which is what we had asked for in the grant, we'll need to have another alternative funding mechanism for that. We've got a nice plan laid out. The windows are on the plan, and I believe they were earmarked as one of the first projects we would take on out of capital reserve. Right. But that would be something that we would discuss as we go into the next cycle about how we want to tackle that. It's not necessarily a budgetary item because we would be using capital reserve funds for it, but it definitely is something that the board would need to authorize in advance because you would then need to authorize us to take money to cover that expenditure. It's not part of the budget. So that's just something to think about. With great resounding success, the playground is open. There are children playing on it again. We're really, really happy about that. The fence around the preschool playground was going last week. It may be completed at this point.
Done.
Yep. So that was the last remaining piece of the playground. We look forward to, the kids are playing on it all winter, most of them. And in the spring, it will kind of be our first, spring with a new basketball court and all sorts of things. So it's great to go by and see the kids playing out there, and it really does look nice, and the kids are having a lot of fun on it.
Jana, can I ask you about the fence?
Yeah.
I haven't been to the playground yet, but does the fence, how there's that back, the path that goes to the rec center?
Yeah, that's where the
Is
fence
it blocked
It's-
off?
It's that,
Okay, so the people
from that
can't.
sidewalk where it comes out next
Yep.
to the building.
Yep.
Heads.
Yeah, it's there's a little cemetery back there too, and so it kind of
know
yeah, they're our friends and our neighbors, but it kind of compartmentalizes the pre-K area. If you remember, we moved that whole pre-K area from one end of the playground to the
Right,
other
yep.
because we felt that was a safer place
yeah.
for it. And the one thing that we had to get was that fence, and the fence really isn't to contain the pre-K students. They can still access the other parts of the playground, but it helps us with monitoring, and it helps keep them from, getting that road, the access road where parents come to drop students off. It just helps kind of provide a safeguard there. Okay, back to me, sorry.
So on these variances, I assume they're because we're halfway through the year, they're 50%. what that variance may be?
Not entirely, because remember, like, if we have a salary and we know what that salary is, those salaries are already locked up. So that's why I'm saying I'm not as concerned about it. Our salaries are all encumbered. There are very few salary-related items that are yet to be encumbered, like we have some spring coaching positions we don't know that have been filled yet, so obviously we can't encumber them till we know who they belong to. We have done most of our, all of our co-curriculars pretty much are all encumbered. Our fall and winter coaching are encumbered. There are some benefits related items that are not fully encumbered, such as sick day buyback, insurance buyback, because some of those things are not yet determined. The severance payments, when you see our next quarterly report, those will be encumbered, including the amounts that were approved by the board as additional payments. So you'll see the impact of those in the next quarter. Again, I think as we come into the end of the third quarter, what we typically do is we kind of put a moratorium on blanket purchase orders. We close those out and we say, if you need something, that's fine, but ask for it and we'll look at it individually. We start to tell people to get things, if they know they need to purchase them this year, get them encumbered in a PO, because those encumbrances will show as being, unavailable. And that really helps us as we come into the end of the year, offering you folks advice about what we recommend as to retain fund balance and those types of things, as long as if we can get a good picture of where we're coming into the end of the year. It's not in this report. But I'll write it up more formally. Just found out today we were approved for a supply chain grant. This is the fourth allocation of that. So we just got slightly 22,000 plus 24,000. Sorry, I don't have it in front of me because left it on my desk. But we just got that today, and that will be used to offset heightened supply costs of our food service program. So it's eligible. For only certain things like unprocessed food. So you can use it for like milk, you can use it for certain produce items, different types of things like that, domestic type apples, things like that. So what they do is they, our vendor will send us all the invoices that correspond to those food costs that are eligible. And what we use is the supply chain money that we already have to offset the cost of our invoice that we pay to them monthly. So at the end of the year, I've locked up the whole amount of our food service contract, but we won't be spending all of that money because we'll be offsetting some of it with supply chain. So it's not a huge windfall, but every little bit helps, and we're happy to do that. So
Can you just remind us how much were the previous grants that you received for this?
there were 4 different allocations, and I'd have to bring that back to the committee with the specific amounts. The first one, they were all sort of around 20,000-ish, but the first 2 are long exhausted.
Okay.
We have a very little bit left of the third tranche, and this third one is coming in
Thank
now.
you.
So it's all told, I'd say it's about 90, if I was going to estimate, about $90,000 over the span of the 4, and that spanned 2 years. So that's kind of the high level summary. Again, you have the exhibits that explain the variances in the different areas. I've also shown you in this report, as we start to think about capital planning, I've put on the impact fund analysis to show you where we're at with the impact funds. That is found on page 8. Those have expiration dates in certain ranges. We don't have a whole lot that expires in fiscal year 25, only 7,000, but then thereafter that you can see in fiscal year 26, we've got almost 50,000 that expires. 27, we have a very small amount. And then in 28, we've got, $115,000 that expire. So we just want to keep our that in mind, because if we don't use these funds, they do get returned to the individuals that paid the impact fee, the contractors that paid it. So this should be part of our planning for capital. And then on the very last page, page 9, I've included the updated capital reserve funds as of November 30th, which was the most recent statement I have. So you can kind of see where we're at with that. Does anyone have any questions for me?
I was curious about the revenue variances. Is it normal not to get the payments from the state and other assessments this time of year? It seems, I don't recall them being that high this time of year normally.
They break, for the adequacy aid, there are set payment windows. So they give us one in September, they give us one in November, one in January, and I think there might be a fourth one. So those don't come. We only receive them in as they come.
So the like local revenues is 7,900,000.
Oh, so that's the current appropriation. That's what comes from the town. They pay us monthly.
Yeah.
So they will have paid us July through,
Okay. I guess I've never seen it
yeah.
articulated in this particular
Next
way.
time, you should have about 8 or 9 months, depending on when the check is received,
that makes
showing
sense.
that.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, at the end of the year, our target is going to wind up being 0 there. It's just the way that it comes in. That only really impacts us from a cash flow standpoint, but we're fortunate here, we don't have a lot of cash flow issues on this side.
I should know this after 3 years. I apologize. The impact fees.
Yep.
I was just
Is
gonna
that
ask
sitting
this.
in some account somewhere, or is it?
It's with the town. So what the town, if there's like and I don't, there's a formula, but what happens is when somebody puts in a building permit to build a house or development, the town calculates what that impact fee is, and it's collected as part of the building fee process, I believe, upon completion of the project. And so it's set aside in an account. They allocate it out based on, again, another formula, certain portion to the school, a certain portion to water and sewer, a certain portion to the town. And then we have 6 years in which to utilize those impact fees.
So there's $271,000 sitting in the account
Mhm.
that the town, sewage, and the school pay access.
This is just
That's
ours.
the school.
Hours.
Are.
This is just
Yeah,
ours.
just for
Yes, the town and I didn't show you that, but the town and the sewer department and the recreation department, they all have their own. These are just ours.
So is this something that could be part of it, especially when we talk about athletic
Could,
fields or?
well,
Well, you can use
could
it
be,
within 6 months.
because that actually, there are,
It
the
expired.
purpose of this has to be, the impact fees have to be an impact on
The
the
buildings
school
and-
district. So,
Right.
like
From
you would think
additional
of,
students, so
yeah, from incoming
When you
students.
move
So
books
if,
or
right, so
Expansion of
or-
things.
if you have to add on to a part of a building, or if you expand your athletic fields, like, that's an expansion to grow, to adapt
It's not
to.
for long-term projects, or it's for immediate impact.
As long as you can do a
basically, right?
long-term project before the funds expire.
But it only gives you 6 months, right?
6
The
years.
system?
years.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I was
so
like, 6
this
months.
is the outside date. Is there any date, like, could we spend
You-
it immediately?
you-
The
you could.
2029 one, we could?
You could.
Okay.
It would be I'll come back to you with information about the process as when we start talking about more capital improvement type of thing. But basically, it's, you would vote to use that money, and some of you may have been here the last time we did it, which was during the building project. No, none of
None
you?
of us. Including me.
Okay, so we'll all learn together on that one. But basically, it's a request to the town to release those funds to the school district, and then you would use those funds as part of a project that meets the requirements.
So, but we just have to make the argument that this is a cost dealing with these additional housing.
Right, or additional needs brought on by student population, right? So if we have inadequate athletic fields, which some would argue, they don't serve our population well, this would be an expansion to address a growing need in the community from the students, and I think that project would be eligible for the impact type of thing. You wouldn't be replacing a roof with it, because that would have had happened anyways. But anytime you're adding something new to the district, if you created if you wanted to build a theater, right, an auditorium, a separate auditorium or something, that would be an expansion of the district to address
Yeah,
needs.
I mean, a lot of times when school districts use it, it's like, it's to deal with actual students, like we need more classrooms to accommodate students.
Yep.
It's like, that's generally the model that it's geared towards. But
Yeah.
if you can justify it as something that is being brought about by the families, students that are coming to the district as a result of the building, then you can use it for that.
And developers pay it.
Yep.
Right.
And they pay it like based on like the there's some calculation,
Yeah.
right? Estimated impact on the district. It doesn't mean it's the actual impact. On the district. It's not one for one the estimate to what the actual impact
Yeah.
is. So like there's a bunch of housing. We talked about this before. That was built like up on like near Lady Slipper area there, right? Like that, like could be like a whole bunch of kids, but apparently there's not a ton of like kids there. But still, the developer paid impact fees that we can use for. Like, just because there weren't kids moving in there doesn't mean they get their impact fees back.
Right.
We can use them for things like expansion of school facilities.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So lots to think about, and that's really good news for us, as we start looking at our capital planning.
I did have another question about capital reserve funds and trust funds. And correct me if I'm wrong, we're in an odd situation where we don't technically control the management of those funds as far as where they're
We don't
they're invested.
we don't control those funds, but I wouldn't categorize it as odd.
I
Most
shouldn't say odd,
most
but-
most schools are in the
Yeah.
same boat. It's
Yeah.
generally handed off to trustees, and the trustees are technically they're an independent organization as they're intended to be.
Yeah.
They
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah.
But odd from the standpoint of a household, I guess, right? A household wouldn't have someone else managing their money, but I guess
Right.
the
Depends
question is,
how much they got.
are they more aggressively seeking better interests or better returns on investments?
So I attended a recent meeting of the trustees. It was in, stop me if I'm wrong, I think it was like
I mean, I'm
December
making the
7th.
assumption that these are low returns.
Oh, they're very low.
Extremely
$1
low.
million, $600
Extremely low.
$600 seems
So,
low.
as you know, because I track the trust funds, I get statements every month that I look at the interest. And so, about a year ago, we started looking at that and trending that. And so we have a bank account on the school side that's invested in, it's granted it's a commercial banking account, and there's all sorts of levers and things that go with it. But, on roughly 4 million average balance, we were earning $90,000 a year. And on the $1.7 million, we were earning, what was it? $600. So we started to, we brought that forward as a question, what is our, the interest rates have changed. Is there another type of vehicle? The town doesn't have the authority over the funds, nor do we. But they did start a dialogue with the trustees. So the trustees have had, and I wasn't part of the earlier stuff, so I can't talk about how many investment vehicles or different things they looked at. But what they said at the December meeting is they have gone forward with a company out of a company that's looking at a kind of an array of investment options that would include things like bonds. It would include things potentially equities, not very heavily because of the way we use the funds, money markets, CDs, different things. It's kind of a mix of those
money
things.
markets are 5% right now, so it's
Yeah,
Right, right. So more to come on that. At the meeting that I was at, they were reviewing the town's policy on investment, and I wasn't privy to that document at the time, but it sounds like they are looking to make changes to the town's investment policy to align with an investment strategy that's being proposed by the new vendor that they've chosen. But all of our funds have been moved over to the new vendor. I haven't gotten a statement yet. That happened in December. And my understanding is right now they're sitting in a money market until they decide how they want to leverage that. So that's good news for us, because if it's like any other money market, we should be making way more than we were before. That said, I don't have any clarity around what the investment strategy might be. I don't know that that's been determined yet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
it's
appreciate Gary for bringing it up, because the same thing caught my eye. Ballpark, doesn't that seem like about 0.2%?
it's very
I
low.
mean, passbook savings pays a multiple
Yep.
of that.
I know.
I feel like we should probably look a little more aggressively into what's being done here, because it just smells shady to me that it would be that low.
But a couple of things I would say. I mean, first of all, the trustee of the trust funds, they manage all the trust funds for the town as well as the school district. So in total, they have about $8 million of funds that they are managing. And so while you and I can go down to our local bank and change our money to a money market fairly simply, it is a little more complex to change investment strategies. So interest rates have, up until the last year, have been historically low across the board. And I think the conversation that Janet and I had with them sort of motivated them to start looking at it, and I think they have now made some very good decisions to move the money to higher investment vehicles. I would hope we will be seeing returns of more like 4 and 5% moving forward. In conversation with Bill Tappan, I'm trying to remember when this was, probably within the last month. That was one of the things he was acknowledging. Yeah, interest should be our friend. We need to get more out of this, because in some ways, if you put money into something and you're making such a low interest rate when the potential somewhere else is higher, your money is actually losing value by sitting in a low interest account. And so when we
Certainly
need to
relative to inflation, it is. Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
So it's important that they do it. So I do think the trustee of the trust funds manage it, and I think they've made some good decisions. I hope that we can share more with you in the near future.
I haven't heard about the next meeting. I've been checking, but hopefully it will be scheduled soon, and maybe we can bring some more information back to the board.
Yeah, I think we'd love to learn maybe what their policy is on when they kind of review this sort of thing, if they have one, and, and
Well,
what
do
the
they
board
meet
can do to
routinely, like a
them.
certain, every couple of months, or?
encourage them.
For the most part, they meet about quarterly. Yeah,
Seems
it's not a.
strange.
They're not meeting every. Certainly
For a
not
while,
as
they
a.
had a real hard time even getting people on
Right.
to be
Yeah.
a trustee of the
Right.
trust fund. Like there
Yeah.
were vacancies constantly there. So like,
Yep.
So this isn't someone that, like the town or the school.
We
is
vote
not-
on
No,
them,
we-
these
don't
we
we?
these
elect
are
them.
local
Yeah, we
people who
vote
are
on them.
elected. These are elected.
They're town people.
Yeah.
They're,
Yep.
Yeah.
They
Not a
are
lot of people run.
So they
citizens
may not
of
have any
Newmarket.
fiscal experience, but they are elected by us.
Is there any policies about like, the risk that those people are able to take on?
Well, I think that's what Janet was
That's
just
what
talking
was
about.
being
Yeah.
discussed. They were proposing some changes to the town's investment policy. But again, I didn't have the document. It wasn't available to me while I was sitting as a guest at the meeting. I don't know what those changes are, and I don't know what the status is relative to how they what they would change from what used to be to what would be. But I do know that we had a pretty robust conversation at the meeting. I did provide some input about how we use our funds, because
Yeah,
they're
I was going to say that's the important bit, right?
Yeah,
'Cause we don't want them investing
there's a
for 20 years,
strategy.
something that we
Right.
use
We need
every
to
6
access it
months.
when we need
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Right. So there's like a strategy. If you are like a Harvard and you have all of these bequeaths to the university and you provide, for example, scholarships from them, the bequeaths never go down. You pay the scholarships off the interest. That's an entirely different investment profile than what we have, which is on any given day, if the roof caves in, we can bring it down to zero. So that, that was one of the points that I mentioned to them, and just said, just be mindful of the fact that, we have a plan, we have a capital plan, and they said they would like information from us about our capital plan. And I said, that's fine, but that's a 20-year capital plan and stuff changes as that goes. So we certainly can let you know what our needs are, but are we locked in on these particular things for the next 20 years? No, we should be reviewing this every year. So those dates can shift, those amounts can shift.
Yeah.
So, they understood, and I don't think it's a fait complete. I think they are figuring things out, and I think there's going to be another meeting. I just don't know when that's going to be.
Are you not routinely, like, in these meetings included? Why
No.
are we a guest when?
Well, we are officially not members of the trustee of the trust funds, so.
The town is also a guest. I mean, no.
Right, no, I know, I understand that, but it doesn't make sense to me, because they're managing our money,
You
but
could
yet,
get an invite.
you'd
Right.
think
Correct.
we would be involved in these meetings.
And we have started a dialogue to ask to be included more in that process, so that we can choose to attend.
I
It's a purposeful
appreciate.
separation in law. It is a purposeful.
Oh, yeah.
that,
Right.
Like,
It
the
should be.
town votes to establish capital reserve funds or trust funds, and they elect the people who are like the.
But they need to have a dialogue with the people that they're, right?
Right.
I get that, Phil, but
I
the,
get
the
it,
thing
but-
that seems strange to me, with maybe one exception, like the budget committee, almost every elected board in this town has some sort of support organization. We have the administration, the council has Steve's people. Like, is there a support organization from the town underneath the trustees of the trust fund, or an outside company that they hire to do this? and who on earth managed to find a way to earn less than 0.2% on the money?
Yeah, I mean,
Because
like, I'm not defending
it's
that.
it's
It's just,
mind
I don't know
blowing
what
to me
the-
that would have been the outcome.
But I think that, I would have to look at the RSAs.
Yeah.
But, like, I think that there's probably like, that prevent, like, help, like, you know, outside of like conversations like this from the town or the district, because it undercuts what the purpose of that separation is, of keeping it like separate and distinct from our operating budget.
Right.
If that's a correct assessment.
That said, it is a public meeting, and I think anybody can attend, right?
Right.
You know, so I went as an attendee.
How many people were there?
Me.
There you go.
Me and the
There you
investment,
go.
me and the investment people and the trustees.
And again, I do want to just reiterate, I do think the intent is there. They are working to move money. And I think Phil's point that there's been some turnover there, I think that does have an impact on their ability to get mobilized. Bill Tappan does work very closely with them, and he's got a really good financial mind. So I'm optimistic that they're making some decisions in the short term that we will see benefit to soon.
It might just be beneficial to suggest to the town respectfully that obviously while the authority to manage this does reside with the trustees, maybe they need a person or a fraction of a person supporting them to keep like a closer eye on things.
Yep. Point well taken.
Yep.
All right.
So back to the financials, any other questions on this report?
We can move right into the, I really want to call it the courtyard design, but we can call it that.
Okay. Mr., obviously, you're going to present this, right?
Yeah,
'Cause Mr. Riley, yeah.
just review it, yeah. And yes, I would agree with you. This is not really a courtyard design. I think it's more a conversation that we need to have. You may recall last year we began talking about, or actually before last year, but from my history, last year, we began talking about how we could bring closure to the courtyard project here at the high school. And you may recall there was $162,000-ish left in the interest earned on the bond fund that we voted on transferring into capital reserve funds. And we had talked about the idea of trying to bring closure, having a committee similar to what we did with the playground, come up with ideas to design the courtyard. When we brought in the architects, they very quickly discovered that the designs did not match the as-builts. So there was a major discrepancy between what was there and what the design said. So all the discussion prior to that had been based upon what was theoretically supposed to be there. When it came down, what had been installed. In fact, it's dark now, but if you look, if you have a good eye, you can see the levels of the doors between the two sides are completely not in a line there. So my point is that a new design had to be developed. So we did our contract to get a new design done, hoping that it would come in at a rate that we could embrace and be happy about. And just to kind of cutting to the chase, they've gone through a process of taking a look at what is out there. The estimate that they're giving us, and this is separate from cost of potentially having a crane to lower stuff out there to do the project, is $663,888. That's the price to do the design that is roughly equivalent to what has been talked about, that has sort of like an amphitheater style setup out there, a performance space, some outdoor classroomist type stuff. And I really wanted to kind of put that in front of you, not because we have to make a decision tonight, but I wanted you to know that that's a big number.
Yeah.
And I think if we, as we talk about capital improvement plans, I think we need to take a step back and ask ourselves, is this one of our priorities? One of the things that I did have a conversation with Mr. Riley about was, and actually Gary and I had a similar conversation. Thanks for coming.
Now we're on the dot.
About the possibility of doing something to beautify the space, but not necessarily putting the level of investment into it that this design calls for. So again, I offer you no solutions right now, other than this is the estimate we've got from the architect to do what has roughly been envisioned. And then again, the crane cost, you need to factor in probably another.
So we're talking over $1 million probably after a crane is
the
involved.
crane, we're probably adding another.
I know.
Yeah, certainly 700,000 plus.
I think if nothing else, an outcome from tonight probably should be whether, from the board, whether or not we want any other money expended on designs or research or anything of that nature. Well,
I think this is a mistake doing, I can't get on board on this project. That's way too much money. Aside from what we've already spent.
I will say things are always cheaper to do now than later. However,
I know, but
this is too much if we don't have it.
right, but
So
I had $660,000 laying around for the district.
Yeah.
That would be the first priority.
yeah, right. So
So of all the high schools I've seen have courtyards, none of them finished.
fine finished.
they're never finished, you said?
Sorry.
Did you say they're never?
Yeah, they all, I don't know what.
Well,
experience, but-
hindsight is always 20/20,
Right.
but certainly, I think closed courtyard should have been completed at time of construction, not after the fact. And I
Yeah.
think we knew that by not completing it at the time of construction, there was going to be a significant added cost, setting aside that the as-built did not match the design. And I think it's just morphed into a much more costly project. I still think there's a solution out there too, because I look at it from the standpoint, this is the central core of the school. We can beautify this, make
Yeah.
it look nicer without having to invest
Right.
$600,000 in it.
I'd prefer that over that. This.
Minus looks, is there any issue like drainage or anything in the courtyard?
Can you speak to, because I haven't really had specific conversations about.
There are drains in the courtyard,
Okay.
but one of the things that we discovered we had a soil study done. There's a lot of clay material in the courtyard that would, in order for us to do a whole lot, would need to be removed and replaced with something that drained better to allow those.
But we're not currently having any flooding issues because
No,
of
because a
lack of
lot of
drainage
it's
or-
a lot of the open, like if we were to put hardscape out there, it obviously wouldn't absorb like the soil would. So no, we're not having leaking into the building when things aren't coming in, but to try and use it for different purposes, it's a challenge because of the type of soil. So I think we would need to determine what we want it to be and give a range maybe, and then maybe take another crack at.
Yeah.
I was talking to Todd about this, and I don't have the solution either, but we want it to be a classroom, but I feel like it could also be a classroom for someone to use in landscape design and construction. If you can find a company or a not a company, but a university or whatever that has that kind of program that might want to come in, and every year they could have a set of kids come in and, maybe you couldn't lug in a ton of new material every year because you don't want to, bring in tons of bricks or whatever, but it might be something that could be used for like that and kind of kill two birds with one stone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why I was thinking too, this is more of an opportunity than it is something that
Yeah.
I'm saying no to. I'm inclined this is not a priority list right now for me.
Yeah.
Agree.
It's too bad because this is a wonderful opportunity, but I don't know, that class just to me freaks me out.
Yeah.
So when
But I could see other things,
when I say we shouldn't expend any money, I don't necessarily think that includes not necessarily buying an electric lawnmower if that's necessary. To ensure the
Old push ones. That have
a real motor. RED.
Well, I do think we can explore
Just get
some
a
low
quote.
cost. We can explore. I'll have Dave Riley do some exploring of what some of the low cost options we could do to number one, just beautify it and make it a useful space in the short term. And to your point, I mean, it could be a very flexible space that changes over time based on whether it's a learning experience for a horticultural program or whatever. But in the short term, it seems like when spring hits, I would at least like to have a plan for how we're going to make it not be an eyesore.
Sean, yeah.
I was going to say, so a lot of classrooms have been talking about doing some sort of like a sign-in type of thing where you can like designate your class to go into the courtyard, which is obviously just not possible at the moment. Obviously in the winter, but during spring times, like we don't really have like tables. There's like again to the beautify, but also like a usable space. Because I mean, I think it's nice. Like I like looking outside and not seeing like, or like I like these windows.
Have you
and
ever
just-
walked through there?
No. So, and
Well, you're only a senior. Give it time.
I mean, yeah, it's been there 4 years. The only time I see people out there is during advisory, like throwing a ball around. And I mean, that's 20 minutes. And it just like, it just seems like such a waste of space. And we've been talking about like obviously getting classrooms in there or having lunch out there. Especially like as a senior, I don't even, I mean the cafeteria is so crowded. I eat in here. During the summer / spring / fall, I'd love to like eat out there or something. So just like more tables, like usable space. So like
But
I
simple,
feel like an
just simple
auditorium.
and
Yeah, I mean, going
picnic
back.
tables.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Going,
I feel
going
like
back
it-
to the conversation about graduating class funds, one thing you
Oh,
could ask
yeah.
a graduating class, you want to donate 4 picnic tables for the,
Yeah.
those are kind of things we could easily do and just come up with some low-cost ways to make it useful
You
for
want to donate
kids.
to the 1.5 million GoFundMe site program we have for our courtyard?
I feel like an auditorium, like or not sorry, not an auditorium. What was it again?
Amphitheater.
Amphitheater, yeah.
Like that would just never ever be used. Like I don't see any scenario in which students are gonna be like, let's use the amphitheater. Like let's present my project on the amphitheater so everybody else in
Mike,
the
I
school
think
can
when
view
you
it.
think,
Like,
I
no
get
one
what you're,
can-
I get what you're saying, but I think when you think amphitheater, yeah, maybe they wouldn't have plays up there, but you probably have some kind of seating that would kind of be terraced up, so kids
That
might
is-
sit out there,
that is true.
that sort of thing.
I just
But
feel
I
like,
get
yeah,
what
like
you're
a
saying.
picnic table
You're
would
not
be, like,
going to
so
have.
much cheaper and still like
It's true.
get the same jaws. I just feel like
Yeah,
I
that
don't.
makes sense.
Because I don't know what the design looks like. I just talked to Mr. Corman earlier, and he was like somewhat describing it to me. And the first thing we said to each other was like, "That is the most waste of money I've ever heard in my entire life."
So we're not
So
going
with
to
that
revisit like the
being-
works of Shakespeare.
Maybe we should talk to the students.
Right.
Right.
So again, I don't think we need to make a decision about this tonight, but I think you have. You've made it clear that this is not something you want to go
Did we
forward
make
on.
it clear?
I mean, it's pretty clear.
Oh, yeah.
So my thought is the next task is to figure out what can we do to just make the space more useful and beautify it without that big price tag. And I think there are definitely options that
Yeah,
we can do.
definitely.
I think it'd be so cool if we could bring in the students to make a plan.
I know, to
and
design
then
something, like
you
a
know,
simple
ask
design.
the board for money or I guess.
Yeah,
There's an opportunity there
I think
too,
I think the
you
kids
know?
were included
Like
originally in
Phil
some of the
mentioned
design.
ELO and,
So, but, I get your point. Affordable design, maybe.
Be careful what you wish for.
That's true.
They'll come back at like 2 million.
Yeah. All right. So I think we can move on from that. Wonderful discussion. Next up, we have self-past presentations. We have budget newsletter.
You want me to jump in on that one?
Absolutely.
Now, first of all, what's in your packet was my first attempt at trying to do a flyer, and if you've tried to print it, you see it's an 8.5 by 11. It's very wordy. So Gary very kindly, very gently said, "Hey Todd, can we do something to make this less verbose?" So, and again, please know my feelings will not be hurt in any way, but trying to just simply take the concept and just bullet the information and try to make it simpler. So this what I gave to you tonight that was on your table is just it fits on an 8.5 by 11. It's bulleted, basic facts. Certainly there's room to pare it down a little further if you guys think that's the case. But one of the things that we had talked about at one of our, and I've lost track of which meeting, but having a flyer that we would be able to pass around. My thought was next week I would do my superintendent newsletter. I would focus on budget. I would give people the narrative that may be too much for a one-page flyer. So the people who are craving a more detailed explanation of the budget, I can give that to them there. And then this could be, or something like this could be linked and put on our webpage as just a quick reference fact sheet on the warrant. And along the same line, Gary and I are doing a video shoot tomorrow with Tim Kremen. Tim's over there. Hi, Tim. On the budget, so we'll have a video that will also explain it. So the thought was, newsletter goes out, a detailed explanation from there, a flyer that's linked, whether it's this one or something like this, and a video.
Could you put a link on here with the more longer explanation
the
on the
way around.
website?
Yep, do it the
Yeah,
other way
because I
around.
think
Yep,
if
that's
you
true.
start out briefer, with
Yep.
the brief explanation, I think people would go say, oh, I want to know more about that, and go on the link.
So the first thought was whether or not either of these two versions resonated with you.
I think it looks good. I don't think
my
it's,
first thought, I mean, for a one-pager, probably to a general audience, needs more pictures, needs more graphics as opposed to words. I mean, you kind of think back, like, what was the main, what was the actual, what's the here? What's the story? Well, we have a budget increase, and the lion's share of that budget increase is not anything that we invented this year. It's continuations of things that the voters approved in years past, or it's having to shift grant-funded positions that we think are strongly justified. And so there's the here is that the budget increase, the vast majority of it, I think with a small exception, is just level programming. And then the only increase, I mean, wasn't there like half of an administrative position, or the increase is, so that's the first part of the story. Second part of the story is revenues, which are actually pretty flat year over year. Third part of the story is what goes on the warrant is basically a worst case scenario that doesn't reflect the fact that typically we're returning $500,000 to $1 million of fund balance every year, because that's just the way things tend to go, all else being equal. So it should be possible to put that in a column chart or a bar chart. Column chart probably better because it goes left to right, but pretty easily of, here's the increase we're seeking, this much of it is level programming, this much of it's genuinely incremental. Here's how the state and federal revenues are changing, which impacts this a little bit. Here's what that equates to on the tax rate, but oh, by the way, in a typical year we return X amount of fund balance, which actually will change it by Y.
I get what you're saying, but I think you start trying to, I think people aren't going to understand the graphs, and to have enough words to make it understandable, you're basically back in the same spot of not being able to fit it.
I would kind of think people are visual thinkers more than like text. So you kind of agree with graphs, but like super simple, right? Like that conveys the information. I don't have an answer other than I do think visual. It's a lot. There's a lot of words.
Yep.
And if we need all the words, we need all the words. But there's a way. Like I know that there's some graphs in the presentation of the budget committee, right? Like that
Right.
financial budget, like really looks some of those.
I think
But I
that,
don't know how you do that for the capital reserve fund explanations, or
Well,
Not saying that to be consistent for each one. I'm
Yeah,
saying
it's
like
true.
where possible,
okay.
integrate visuals.
I think the operating budget is the part that's most conducive to trying to reframe it more as a picture than a narrative.
It's the biggest number.
Yeah.
yep.
You should probably get the most real estate out there.
Like, there's the graph that was in the, budget with the, like, traditional, like, the year-to-year costs and the additional cost one, and there's also the one about the state funding. Is that kind of what we're thinking about, or?
Well, there are a number of charts and graphs. In fact, after when we discussed the budget narrative that went to the budget committee, I know that was a lot of our conversation, and we did add a number of charts and graphs. I guess where I struggled with it and why I definitely agree we can jazz it up with graphics, no question about it. Where I struggle is you want it to be, this sheet to be understandable by itself without a lot of explanation. I mean, my thought was, and again, I'm open to being convinced otherwise, was that Gary and I could put together a video and we would incorporate into it many of the charts and graphs, and we would make this like, 5-minute.
You or whomever. It doesn't have to
Okay.
be whoever. It doesn't have to.
Some people would see the video, and some people would see this without the video, right?
Correct, but the idea was to push it all,
Yeah.
put it all together in one place so that a person could see them all. I mean, one of the struggles that I think we also have is, how do you communicate information to the community so that they actually see it? And I do think you have to do it in multiple ways so that people see it. But I do.
I think it needs to be repeatable too, because
Yeah.
I think this should be every year. People who know they can go and they're going to get a very simple. This is the budget. This is why it's the way it is.
I mean, there's a
How
lot.
are we planning to distribute this?
Digitally only, I think, right? Is that
First
your
way
estimate?
was going to be I push it out via email with to all of the,
Okay.
and then
Black-
Tim
to the
very
whiteboard?
kindly, Blackboard. Yeah.
Blackboard.
Tim very kindly sticks my newsletter in the town newsletter, and that goes out to the world. Within it, as Amy suggested, linking this, the video, so it all goes out so people have that, and then put it front and center on our webpage that says budget information, and all the links are there.
I just think if you're going to start using graphs and everything, you should be consistent with, the budget committees. They have tons of graphs. I mean, it all has to be the same because it's really it's all the same information, really, coming from the budget committee, coming from the school district. I just think it's.
And I think we probably want that, right? I mean, the budget committee was just very complimentary of what we put in front of them. They liked it, and it resonated with them. And not everybody in the town has the same sort of mindset for numbers as somebody who decides to run for the budget committee. But
So,
Can I, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
can I offer a couple of insights with wording?
Yeah.
And please roll your eyes at me so I'm just thinking about when people read this, about how they may respond to it, especially when it comes to like their tax money. On the Article 2, the second to last bullet, that talks about a decrease of 2.44 FTE staffing. Could you just rephrase it as decreases 2.44 FTE of staffing to reflect changing needs? So like people aren't thinking like we're
That there were no.
slashing positions.
Sure.
Right.
And then also with Article 3, like after people are reflecting on that we just invested all this money in the schools and they're thinking, well, now we need 4.9 million more in the next 20 years. Like I just might be taken aback. So I was wondering, like, could you just find, like somehow combine the first and second bullet and say like funds a 20-year capital improvement plan to maintain tradition of the new schools or tradition of
Sure.
investments and it's just so it's more to maintain what we already have as opposed to new costs. I'm just thinking about how people may respond. But
Yep.
other than this is very good. I'm very impressed with what you put on that sheet.
I'm sorry.
You go ahead.
I was going to say, my one thought I would have, if somebody wants to work with me to revise it, I would love that. Gary has been very kind to make some suggestions. While I'd love to be a communications expert, I'm not, and so like what exactly would resonate with people? It would be helpful if there's somebody who has sort of a feel for where they think they'd like it to go, to just sit with me, because I do think time is of the essence in terms of
Right.
when is this going to be valuable. We want this to be out probably before the deliberative session,
Yeah.
so that people can have it, and maybe even have it as a flyer we can hand out at the deliberative
Oh, yeah,
session.
that's a great. Yeah.
If I mark this up a little bit before the policy meeting next week. and
Absolutely.
share it.
Totally.
So if we all have suggestions, we'll
Yep.
email you
Absolutely.
Yeah.
and
One
take
thing
it
I
from
was
there.
going to say, and I'm happy to mark up as well too, is that Article 2 here is far and away the largest. It has the same, if not maybe arguably, if you start measuring here, less real estate than Article 4, which is $75,000 is actually coming out of additional fund balance, right? Like, I think that more real estate to the big ticket item might make sense.
Okay.
Smaller, fewer explanations for things like this, Article 4 and 5.
Yep.
Yeah, you don't want to minimize the big enchilada here.
Yeah. That's one
I
that
feel
would
like I've started
disappoint.
this. Do you want people to send it to me so I can kind of collate them? I don't want you getting 6 different, 5 different.
I mean, it's, if they, I mean, it can go to me, it can go to you. I guess what I would love to have is somebody who wants to sit with me and sort of help me sort of process through this stuff and make some decisions. Because again, we probably would need to have something ready prior to the next board meeting.
So
Yeah.
I'm just looking at dates. So you want to have, I forget the date of the deliberative.
Deliberative is February 3rd, that's a Saturday.
Okay.
And so if we wanted it to go out,
We have to have it ready.
My initial thought was if we could have something that was mutually agreeable, that maybe late next week, I put it out, that gives us a full week ahead of the deliberative.
Okay.
So yes.
I'm happy to do it unless someone else wants to, or
Well,
one,
yeah,
two of us.
I'm happy to come in and sit with you for an hour. I just don't want to overwhelm the conversation. You know, I've got my biases on how things should look, but so does everyone, so.
But it sounds like what I'm hearing is we'd like it to be more visual if we can. We want to prioritize the operating budget because that's the biggest ticket item. We want that to get a higher priority. And we want to soften some of the
I don't even know
language.
if I'd bother putting Article 1 on here, because it's the same every year.
Mhm.
And
Oh,
Well, is this gonna go out though? Is the first thing people are gonna see this is the deliberative session?
no, he's going to send it.
Again, trying to get it out before the deliberative
Blackboard.
so that we could hand it out at deliberative as well.
And as people come in,
But we would need to approve this at the next board meeting.
yeah.
Well, or we just authorize him to.
yeah,
I mean,
Take
what, right, what we're not,
We'll
what
have to
we're,
approve it,
what
yeah.
I, what I
It's
have
not like
tried
it's,
to do
voting.
very painstakingly is to not be political in the sense, like it's just trying to say, here are the facts.
Right.
So, because one of the things, and I don't, I remember it because I remember talking with Meredith about it, but during the bond vote, Newmarket did get dinged for overly using school district communication channels to politic on the bond, and that you're not supposed to do that. So we're supposed to be as neutral as we can, present the facts. So we
Okay.
want to make sure that that's what we're doing. But if we can come up with ways to make it graphic so it's easier to understand, absolutely, those are things that we can do. So it sounds like, are they going to send stuff to you, and then you and I will,
Sure.
and
that's
then
fine.
maybe Dan can
yeah, I'll
join in. We'll do what we can to come up,
Take a
as if
crack at
people are
making a
okay with it.
picture.
Again, not taking any stands on things, it's just trying to present it in a way that's informational.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I like, I think Phil's suggestion on 2, make it a little, because it's the main, it's our operating budget, so I agree with him that. And then on this bullet you have includes funding for 3 previously grant-funded positions. You can just add without cutting positions. You know, you don't have to go into greater detail than that. There's no,
I don't
And-
know that I wouldn't emphasize, though, that those are for the social work and counseling positions, because those are important. It's kind of important that people know what they're paying for with that.
well, it's going to be in the, when he put,
Yeah.
Todd will put in the links, it will all be in more detail.
Just send me
Right?
your
Yeah,
feedback.
I feel like we're getting to it.
Yeah.
I just want to say, I just want to say thank you, first of all, for the time you spent on this. I
Right.
can't imagine how much time it
And then you
took.
spend again because of my
But
big
then-
mouth, so I'm sorry
Yeah.
about that.
To be honest, it's trying to if you're going to do a
Yeah.
one-sheet thing, what are you going to do? And I think that's,
But then,
I think
yeah, but
that's
then
the
to be
challenge.
also be open to our comments shows a
Yeah.
lot about your
no, it's,
demeanor, so thank
Your
you.
As I-
patience.
as I
Yes,
said,
it's good.
as I said to Gary, this is a reflection of this board, and it needs to. It's your way of communicating to the community, so it's on all of us. So we just want to make sure it reflects what we wanted to say.
Well, we appreciate it, Todd.
Yeah.
For your
So the
hard
next up
work.
is the proposed warrant, which is
There's really nothing to talk about.
the only difference is that it has the unanimous budget votes on it. Okay. So we're gonna move along. Is that fine?
Yes.
Thank you. Any correspondence?
No.
No. Sorry. Thank you.
No,
School board goal update. I think the big item here is just that. Sorry, I'm on the warrant.
The master
The
plan.
big update here is just that we're still working on the master plan. Todd's been in communication with the town.
They would
Right.
officially like a school board member to be a part of
Oh,
the
okay, thank
master
you.
plan committee. So I know we had talked about it a month or so ago, and I know there was somebody who expressed interest in it. So they absolutely, the master plan committee approved adding a school board member to it, so we should officially designate who that's gonna be.
Okay.
Are you still interested, Bill?
I'm interested, but I think there was also discussion about having a member of the CIP on the master plan update, which if I went there as the CIP representative, that would also afford an opportunity for school board members.
Could we,
Just saying.
So you could have 2 school boards, yeah.
is this something that we'll maybe wait until after the election? Because I know.
Yeah, when would it start?
Dan and.
They're already meeting now.
Oh, really?
Oh, they are?
They had their first organizational meeting, I want to say was late November, and they had
Oh.
one other meeting maybe 2 weeks ago where they, and I got to give Bart a lot of credit. He did reach out to me. We talked about it. I reemphasized how much we wanted a school board representative on the committee, and
How
he brought that
often do they
immediately.
meet? I'm sorry.
They're in the process of figuring that out.
Oh,
There's
okay,
gonna
so they
basically,
haven't
what it
all-
sounds like what's gonna happen is they're gonna break up into groups with chapters, and there's gonna be big meetings and subcommittee meetings, and it's a commitment.
So, can I find out, before we make a decision, because I agree with the election, right? Like, really, there's only 3 of us that can do it right now on this stuff. Wait, no, 4 of us? How many? Well, 3.
3. Me,
But I would
you.
I probably wouldn't want a new person
And
on
Dan.
the school board, representing the school board in something as like big as the master plan update. I'd like to just find out if CIP's getting us something now, because I am interested.
Yep.
Very interested.
You could probably wear 2 hats. I think it's CIP. You're talking about the process and how things are brought there, as opposed to.
But if there was a CIP rep and there was a school board rep, it would be great.
I get what you're saying, but I don't think we have to work with the people right now.
We're a small group of 5 people. I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess how many, let me phrase it a different way, how many meetings do we think they'll have between now and election day? Because budget committee isn't gonna slow down until we get past the election.
Yeah, but are we gonna have a
Right.
new person? So if it's not one of us,
Well, no, what I'm saying is I could probably do it, but
Not until
after we
budget
get
committee.
past budget season,
Is it going to be the end of the world if we don't have someone until next meeting? Because that's.
Is it?
I don't
We're
think,
moving that quickly.
no, I don't think, I think they're making organizational decisions as we are going along, and I think the real impact is gonna be in the actual writing of chapters and the research around chapters.
So we could probably have someone start, and they could always change, be a different person
Could be.
if they're just organizationally.
what's the commitment time frame? Do you know? Like-
It's, again, it's in the works.
Oh, okay.
I can't give a timeline. I mean, we're talking about a process that's gonna drag on for a year or more. It's a big task. Yeah, so it's a big task.
Well, I'm concerned about when they're meeting. Like, I would be happy to do it for the next month and a half to pass the baton to someone else, but I just need to know what they're doing.
Yeah, are they meeting during the day or are they?
No, they've been meeting at late afternoons, evenings, like stuff that's similar to what we do, 5 and 6 o'clock. At this point, I believe they've only had 3 meetings. Hold on, see if I can find.
It's kind of a lot to miss, though. I mean, if
are there?
Who's chairing it?
I don't know who has been elected chairman. Bart is the one who's
Bart's like-
facilitating it. I have not attended a meeting, so again, it's in the works. See if I can find anything on it. I don't think it would be the end of the world if we waited until February 1st. So if that's what we want to do, we can certainly do that.
well, if we need to send
any
someone,
elected
I can attend the first couple, but then we need to
Or
really
just
sit down
people from other
after the
towns?
election and think
Different
about
departments and stuff, right?
all our committees,
Right.
because I just took on the Health Benefits Committee, and that's like a 6-month
Yeah,
commitment,
it's another meeting.
and it meets twice a month, and it's on school board days. So it's like,
Be bigger. Should be 7 people.
I don't mind doing that
Yeah.
for the next couple months, but we do need to,
Okay.
once we get reorganized, we're gonna have to really
Well, let me
figure it
circle
all
back
out.
to Bart and let him know that we absolutely want to select somebody. Can we get the meeting scheduled so that as of February 1st, we can officially appoint someone? Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So next up, we have the program of studies, which I think we already approved. We were just one. No, we didn't approve it.
No, it was presented last time. We agreed to approve it this time. I did want to, just to remind people, there, Andy, when he presented it, he did suggest there are some policy changes he would like to discuss, and he is coming to policy next week to review those. So what I would ask, because timing is everything with the program of studies, if we wait until the next meeting to give approval, it will delay getting things ready to get to students in early February. So I would ask that if you're willing to do this, to consider approving it as presented pending the policy changes that the policy committee may be recommending.
Yeah.
One quick comment, and this is nothing, it's more about, just they're aware that there's nothing in here about the citizenship exam that we have to take. Oh, I'm sorry. So it's in the civics, it's in the description for the civics course.
But it's not in the
But
requirements?
it's not in the requirements.
Yep.
And that's really more their preference than mine.
Yep.
Awesome. All right. And last in discussion, we have the 24-25 final calendar. Are there any changes we feel?
The one thing I wanted to highlight for you, and actually I wish Sean hadn't left yet. You may recall one of the things you asked the students to look at was the Columbus Day holiday.
Yes.
And in kind of reviewing things with Sean, the student body was not inspired to have an opinion strongly one way or the other. They did attempted to hold a forum, and they did attempt to survey, and it got limited feedback. So his response was, this is not an issue that the student body is concerned about.
Passionate about.
So the calendar that I put in front of you proposes the idea of switching to Indigenous Peoples Day. I did check with Steve Fournier just to reconfirm that the town refers to it as Indigenous Peoples Day / Columbus Day, so they do both. So that's the only thing different than anything else we've talked about, and so it's for you to discuss.
Anyone not like that?
It works for me.
I'm fine. I prefer it, but that's.
Yeah.
Is there any way to follow the town?
It's fine with me.
That's what you want. I mean,
Yeah, because it's just the federal government would change the name of the day. Because it's the federal holiday, right? Is one title.
Yep.
I mean, I see the town, right? They're splitting hairs. They're just going,
Yep.
they're not splitting hairs. They're like trying to hold things, right?
I'm fine.
I'm not going to follow the sword either way.
I'm fine if we want to follow the town for consistency.
It's fine with me. I don't
Yeah.
care either way.
The students had a real loud voice. I absolutely know that. I'm still surprised that there's no.
Yeah, me too.
I'm disappointed. This is an opportunity, I'm sorry.
I mean, this is like, it's a day off.
Yeah, right.
They're
All right.
certainly not out there celebrating.
Whether what it's called.
Andrew, look at you. The question.
Nope.
Oh. All right. So with that, we're going to propose in following the town. Sounds like. Anyone against
But if
that?
someone has real agita about that, I'm not for it.
All right. Sounds like the majority's not against it, so I'm going to push forward. We've already done public comment, so I'm not going to do that again. Next up, we go into meeting minutes. Pardon me, if I had a correction I want to find. Found it. Okay. Seek a motion to approve the Jan 4, 2024 meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Dan, second by Andrew. Any discussion? I have one discussion.
I have one thing.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I think it's kind of strange on third paragraph where you open the floor to public comment. Although members of the public were in the audience, there were no public comments. I think we should just stick to,
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're probably right.
yeah, I don't think that's,
so amazing that we had members of the audience.
I know.
I was too
Like,
excited.
noting it in the
I
minutes.
know,
Yeah,
exactly. It was a change for sure. And that's it for me.
My revision is on page 5 under action items. There's 2 seconds in action item 1 and none for action item 2. So I think one of them just has to be moved down to action item 2.
Oh, yeah. See that?
I do recall them being both the same person. So, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, let's pass manifests.
Move to approve the manifest in the amount of $1,085,742.03.
Second.
Second.
Motion by Phil, second by Dan. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 I guess we're gonna hold on the budget flyer newsletter.
Although, do we want to
Yeah.
authorize
that's fine, yeah.
it to be done so that, again,
Yeah.
it's not taking a political position, it's factual, but authorizing someone to do it?
I move to authorize superintendent to create the right word?
Sure.
24 Newmarket School District Budget Newsletter at the 7-8 district.
I'll second that.
Excuse me.
Tight. Any
Bless you.
discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Phil, Andrew,
I'm sorry, I,
did you say Phil? I didn't.
Aye.
Oh, you did. Thank you. Seek a motion to approve the program studies, pending the policy revisions that may come from the policy committee.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Amy, second by Phil. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, that passes. Approve the, seek a motion to approve the 2024-25 calendar with the revision of oh my gosh.
Indigenous
Indigenous
Peoples' Day.
Day and Columbus Day as the holiday title. Thank you. Wow.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Next up, we have a public meeting. Has everyone had an opportunity to look at the superintendent's
Yep.
Yes.
letter?
Yes. I'm sorry, can I ask
Self-evaluation.
one more question?
Sure.
The deliberative session is the 3rd of
Third.
February? When is the town deliberative session? 'Cause I noticed it's...
Same day.
Is it also at the
Yes.
cafeteria?
We usually do
We're all-
one
Yeah, we do
following the
one
other.
We're all
after
here.
I know
another.
we usually do one from the other, but it's here.
So
it's
the,
not at
so
town
the,
hall.
Oh.
town's at 9 o'clock, we're at 10 o'clock.
Not for members of the public. It's because there's so many boards that have to be there that
Yeah.
we need to wonder. All right, so we still have a student matter, is that correct?
Yes.
So I'd seek a motion to go into non-public session pursuant to RSA 91A32C to discuss the student matter and to discuss superintendent evaluation.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Phil, second by Amy.
can I,
Yes, you may say whatever you like. Go ahead.
before, with the superintendent evaluation, that almost has to be done next meeting, or the meeting directly after that, right? So we have to approve that?
I mean, if
that's
this
a good
board
point.
wants to complete it, it would need to be completed by the election, yeah.
So do we need to discuss in public how we're gonna do that? Or can we do that in non-public?
Well, we need to discuss how we're going to do it in public, but what discussion as far as dates?
Dates, yeah.
Well, we have,
What's the process we have to follow now?
Or just like we have his
His narrative.
narrative, and then we have to come together and write, very similar to what we did last time, a narrative of the evaluation.
Sure. Which will be tough. Does anyone have time to do that?
Is that what the policy
in the next
says?
week?
The policy basically said, and again, we're dealing with a very truncated timeline because it was adopted
Yeah.
within the last meeting. What's supposed to happen is twice a year, we have a non-public for conversation, to share input, give feedback, and then annually there is a written evaluation. So we're kind of, you could argue that what we're doing tonight is having one of those oral conversations,
that.
and then next time, maybe that's when you have the conversation to say, here's how we're going to write this evaluation, who's going to do
I
it.
support that interpretation policy.
I'm sorry, that just hit my head right as we were doing
Yep,
that.
that's
Go ahead
fine.
before we close it out. Thank you.
So by roll call vote, Gary Swanson, aye. Amy Tilton,
Aye.
Andrew,
Aye.
Hunker, Gonzaro,
Aye.
Dan Smith.
Aye.
With that, we are non-public at 6:55, and we will not be returning to the air. The channel 8.